If you do choose to stand up.
Hello, Dojo Group Facebook land. I assume that we are live, streaming from my iPad, being held up by a vase. If you're here, leave a comment, and as people join in throughout the evening, I should be able to see. I'm new to this, so bear with me. I'm seeing that, it tells me that there's people online and comments. Okay, cool. Hello. I hope you guys are well. It's Friday night. This is part one of our ongoing series of webinars. Webinars? Maybe that's much better. It sounds better than seminar, doesn't it? I hope that you guys have had a good day. It is the 27th of March. And to kick things off, this is our first live stream for Hoshin, for Running Spirit Dojo. We're going to just have a chat about the fundamentals of Hoshin, some of the history and some of the fundamental principles and ideologies, and then build from that. My hope is that weekly, with the Friday night videos and chit-chats, whether they go for half an hour or an hour, depend on how much I want to talk and how much you guys want to listen, we'll have a look through a whole range of different ideas. So Hoshin is full of concepts, spiritual concepts, concepts of strategy, humanistic theories, humanistic philosophy, and it's presented in a martial art context, but there's no requirement for us to be on the mats doing stuff, so the perfect thing to happen at this time. To kick things right off from the base, it's good I can see your little comments popping up. I like this. I should have done this years ago. To start off, way back at the beginning, Hoshin's a martial art. Hoshinden Jutaijutsu is a martial art that was created in America in 1981 by a man called Dr. Glenn Morris. And he had studied a range of different arts before he put that together. He had some time in American military. Later, after he already started Hoshin, he got involved in the Bujinkan. By the time he started Hoshin, he had doctorate degrees, was a lecturer, university lecturer. He was highly well trained in communication and I suppose media, and so he presented a lot of his work in that language. So in 1981, Hoshin comes into being at a university that he was teaching at, presented as a way for him to effectively try out some ideas that he had. And so we're going to talk about some of those base ideas and how they propagated through Hoshin over the decades, and how we ended up with them as the Hoshinden Jutaijutsu school, and just some ideas of that. So hopefully this will be enjoyable. I think some of you are streaming it from your workplace, which is kind of cool. So hi to everyone who's just joined. Going back and talking about maybe not necessarily history timelines, but some of the principles. In Glenn's initial book, it's called Path Notes of an American Ninja Master, which I have heard from some of his students was always meant to be a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, for those who thought that was a pretty ridiculous title. That book is like the beginning of his journaling for his students and for the presentation of his work, really, all wrapped around one summer where he spent the time in meditation. And in these meditations, he had a question, a specific experiment that he wanted to discover and find out about, and that had come through his previous study of Kung Fu and Chinese Taoist meditation, effectively, forms of Qigong. So what he found was that during the meditation process, and again, I'm just going to breeze over this for now as a basic history. I'm not going to detail those things right now. They're all in the books. He found that he had certain experiences that were very modelled up to things that he'd read. The experiences that he had in his own personal meditations were reflected in the writings of countless spiritual cultures and methodologies, and he took that to be kind of the basic resources for his self-investigation. So out of that was kind of born this hope, I suppose, that the art that he put together, Hoshin, which began, I said, as a university kind of getting a group of people who used to, I think they were students of his at the uni, don't quote me on that, getting together after hours at the uni and just using one of the rooms, late 1970s, 1980, 1981, throwing each other around, and exploring ways of introducing and refining combat jiu-jitsu, he then finds himself marrying and merging his hope for an art that could really bring to focus the personal development aspect of martial arts, and maybe serve to be a beacon or a lighthouse for his students and for others who were interested in following some of the self-exploration journeys and things that he'd found in his meditation. Now that book is called Path Notes of an American Ninja Master, and that's kind of like the quintessential Hoshin reading. I'm looking at it right now in the dojo. I've got a big red cover. It's got a printout of Glenn, with his gi on and a kind of a watermark of his Godan certificate in Bujinkan. And it's a fascinating book. If you don't have a copy, you can find it online. I think Lulu Books, maybe. I might have just made up that company. I think that might have been where I bought it from. It's been here for years. Those of you who know about it know which book I'm talking about. So he basically took his combat jiu-jitsu and started creating a curriculum. And within the curriculum, obviously, you start to build an idea of the outcomes that you want your students to meet. So it becomes an outcome-driven process, method. In those outcomes, it starts to become really clear that you want more than just physical attributes. So it's not just an observation that the student can jump up and down and move left and right and do forwards rolls and backwards rolls. Those things are very important, fundamental skills, movement skills, motion, but there's more that you're interested in. You're interested in the human being as an individual and the development of the human being as a kind of transcendental journey, And this is just standard spiritualism. You find this all over the place. This interest in something beyond the physical flesh, or something beyond the skills that are attainable through repetitious motion. You surely have to have a way to observe morality and to suggest the possibilities for self-observation. And my interpretation of Glenn's work was always that I think he did a good job. My background of martial art experience is in Hoshin Roshu, the Hoshinden Jutaijutsu that I'd learned in Australia, and Bujinkan, Budo Taijutsu. And I don't have a massively broad study of other Western arts, dabbled in bits and pieces here and there. But of what I've found the last 20 years, I have really found Glenn's work to be indicative of the experiences that I have discovered through my own meditations and through my own practice and my own breath work and my own personal development, me having to apply my own learning, things that I've learned through martial arts on a physical level, had to apply them mentally and emotionally under difficult circumstances, maybe with other human beings, or in difficult circumstances in terms of problem solving that aren't just physical problem solving. And I've been impressed at how much of Glenn's methodology has married up his metaphors have married up with my own experiences. Now that's just been what I have found. That might not be what you guys find. You would have to ask the black belt crew, the Hoshinden black belt crew, about their experiences. Those are the ones, those three at the moment have been following along this in their black belt grades and get more into this from purple belt onwards. But what I have found and what has helped refine and tee up my continual passion for Hoshin is that it has always been a vehicle of liberation for myself from my own sense of self-imposed limits. And whether or not that was actually Glenn's goal, go back and ask. Glenn passed away in 2006, so we won't be getting that information on a physical level anytime soon. But he does still have students in America who are his direct lineage students, and we are in communication with them. It would be fascinating to actually pose those questions to them and find out, is this what he intended originally? Do they even know that? Or are these just things that happened along the way that came into as bonus packages? Yeah. But Glenn's purpose of the martial art and the Jutaijutsu, and really what my hope has been in continuing on that with the Hoshinden Jutaijutsu, is to put together a framework of martial arts that moves the body through the coloured belt grades in such a way that it prepares the physical structure and the physical body for the development of further bioelectric experiences down the track. So that experiences of meditation, those of you who were in my class a week or two ago, the Hoshin Qigong, the breath work, the bone marrow, the bone breathing, bone washing, these are all concepts from Kundalini Yoga and from various forms of Qigong. Lots of Kung Fu. They do this on a daily basis. They're quite used to this. Just a lot of other martial arts don't have these kinds of activities. So those things those activities, I have found through the practice of martial arts and through the practice of Hoshinden Jutaijutsu, that when it's come time for me to actually apply my breath work and see if I can feel my fingers and toes, it's easy. It might not happen immediately, but it's doable, and it's doable in a short space of time. And my discussion with other martial artists who've not studied similar arts, but then they have somehow ended up having an interest in or being involved in some way with breath work or with Qigong or with Kung Fu styles and breathing activities, that they seem to report that they have more difficulty, or that they find that it's almost like those experiences aren't readily available for them. They have to do a lot of other work, and their teachers come back to them with a lot of standing poses, a lot of specific ways of presenting their body, lots of like horse stance for a long period of time to prepare them into the meditative state, into Tiana. So I don't know whether that is just by fortune for me and my body and my makeup. Again, you'd have to compile the work from the current Hoshinden Black Belt crew and also my colleagues, people who've also been studying for a couple of decades in this similar vein, and actually find out. Maybe it is something that's unique to the style, but my interpretation is that was the purpose of very specific movements and very specific motions that build on each other, grade by grade by grade. Now, I'm sure that you guys know the rough timeline of story, but Glenn, through the 1980s, develops Hoshin, does a lot of other study, gets involved with Bujinkan, Budo Taijutsu, through primarily a friend of his, Stephen Hayes, and ends up quite embroiled in Bujinkan, and is training in Japan and back and forth. So Bujinkan enters Hoshin at a later stage. It wasn't part of the fundamental makeup of the art at the start of the 80s, which is just important to note. Yeah? Glenn starts writing his books in the late 80s and 90s, I believe, and then continues to travel around the world. He's teaching. He has multiple, students all over the place and dojos. And we're getting to the new millennium. In 2006, Glenn passes away on the 1st of April. So every year on the 1st of April, there's a Hoshin group, a Facebook group for Hoshin students that is run by Jen Fletcher. She's the head of the Hoshin UK, and she started it probably a couple of years after Glenn died. And it's every year she invites everyone to a Glenn's potential death day, like Elvis, on the 1st of April, might have just vanished into hiding. It's an ironic day to have passed away. And there's just kind of a reminder and discussions in the group about Glenn's work and where we're all at now, those of us who joined. So that's coming up. From 2006, when Glenn passed away, very shortly after that, 2007, 2008, from my memory, is when my Hoshin teacher, Jeff Smith, and his wife separated, and it brought a massive change to Hoshin Jitsu Australia Pacific, which was the subgroup of Hoshin that broke off in 1997, I think. That was my teacher, Jeff. I met him in 2001. And I leave Sydney in 2005. On a final of 2006, I head off from Sydney and move to Melbourne, and then it's 2006 and 2007 where all this drama plays out. We, as a dojo, start in 2009 because I'm involved still in the Hoshin dojos in Sydney from 2007 and 8, and I get back in touch with the remaining few people who are still involved in Sydney. And I get back involved more because Hoshin meant so much to me. It did so much for me, especially as a teenager, that I felt a sense of obligation to the art, not really to any of the people involved so much as to the principles and the idea that it was, that I had interpreted it to be. So I'm involved in that way at that time, and I say, you know what, I'm living in Melbourne. It's 2009, start of 2009. I'm driving up, I'm up and back from Sydney a lot. Sometimes I spent 3 months there, working with some of my colleagues there at the time and helping teach classes and continue to study. And I say, why don't I just start a dojo in Melbourne? Because that might help to expand the reach of people. I live here anyway, it'll certainly be easier for me. And then there can be, again, maybe some multiple schools and some multiple streams of thought working into this. So May the 1st, 2009 is when the Reigning Spirit Dojo is born. And I can still remember the 5 students on the first night. It was a Friday night class. It was very clear. And that just started at the Northcote Town Hall. So at that time, the goal was continuing my presentation of the study of Hoshin that I had taken from my teachers, and then collaborating with the remaining Hoshin Australia people. And that really lasted. For some of you who then joined the dojo in 2010, there are obviously students in 2009 right up. We moved from Northcote Town Hall to maybe 10 months later to the, it was a scout hall over near Station Street. Can't remember the name of the suburb. Vanished. The scout hall's gone now. We were there for a couple of months, ended up moving to Hurstbridge and managed to cull the remaining of my students by accident down to 1. And I'm sure you guys, some of you know the story of David Clark, who was the one remaining student who followed me from the Fairfield Guides Hall to the Hurstbridge Scout Hall, where I continued the teaching on Friday night, 2010, and David Clark was my only student for months, and months and months and months. And I kept saying to my partner at the time, I'd come home after class and I'd say, it was good, but if he misses one class, I'm done. I tried and I didn't work to build the dojo. So, and wouldn't you know it, he just kept turning up. 10 points, Dave. Week after week, Dave made the trip out, and we studied, and it was great fun. Getting to really refine, still teaching effectively the Hoshinden Jutaijutsu Australia Pacific curriculum. So that happened right through 2010, and then probably around the middle of the year, I'd have to go and check my notes. I have a feeling it was around winter of 2010, Australian winter, that a few extra students come along. Rory joins the dojo that year with his father. Reeve and Stephen joined the dojo that year, and a few other select students. And all of a sudden, I hear from David Clark that, yeah, that's right, Stephen, 10,000 words. I hear from David Clark that he's suddenly moving to Indonesia. and very quickly, his life changes and he moves, and I find that I'm then, there's a whole new wave of students who were there at the Hurstbridge Scout Hall, and that's really when that was like a whole other epoch of the Reigning Spirit Dojo. So there was this first year it was about me finding my feet, really, and then this next section was us at the Hurstbridge Scout Hall from 2010 until 2013, I want to say. Which was, we built up the dojo, and it was still a Hoshinden Jutaijutsu Australia Pacific dojo. It was teaching and following the curriculum as it was, and I was adding in extra bits, but under the guise with the teachers who were still running Hoshin in Sydney, that under the guise of the base learning remaining consistent, so that the gradings would be national. Oh, I see your comment, Stephen. Jim. See, now Jim joined the dojo on the first day, and then I can never talk about what happened to Jim, because unfortunately it was a terrible story, those of you who know the story. But let's just say bits of Jim live on with us here. the colour of the mat. So digressing back to where we were, that was that other era. That was like a second sort of wave of Radiant Spirit Dojo from 2010 to 2013. January of 2014, we move out of the Scout Hall and we move into our shared factory with Going Green Solutions in Hurstbridge still, 946 Main Road. And that's a whole other section. So there's another tidal wave of things that happened there. We'd left, or rather Hoshin, Australia Pacific, and I went in different directions. And some of you who were around at that time, some of you in 2013 will remember the night that I sat you guys down in a huge circle and said, I have some fascinating news. Remember that art that had a specific name and a specific kanji, and we were studying that and grading in that. Unfortunately, things have to change. And some of you, I'll never forget what some of you said to me that night. It really set things in stone for me over the ensuing years, right up to today. I still think about some of your comments and feedback. And primarily that there was a consensus that they were interested, the student body was interested in continuing the dojo forward. It didn't have to be under that name, it didn't have to be under that curriculum. But there was a goal and an interest that the dojo represented something and meant something more to the student group and to the body than what had started. And it was the first time that I really got to realise that there was something going on here that was way bigger than me, and it was way bigger than what I had intended. My original development of the Radiant Spirit Dojo was to continue Hoshin in a way that I thought it deserved to be continued, from something that was my interpretation of what it was, and also from my own selfishness. There was no one to train me in Melbourne, so it was a good opportunity to breed my own students, so to speak, and my own training partners over a long period of time. It's coming to fruition now. So that was the first time that I really realised that there was something going on here that was a lot bigger than what I was even aware of. We moved out of the Scout Hall. 2014 to 2016 was that next chunky era. And a lot of you guys joined then. A lot of the students who now are not yet members of the Black Belt crew but are very close, and those higher grades, those of you who've become really solid pieces of furniture at the dojo, who I love so dearly, a lot of you joined in that little wave, a lot of that tidal wave. And that was a fascinating time. You know, we had half the building at the back. We'd entered through the side, if some of you remember. And for me then, that was the time where I focused on developing a whole new curriculum, because we had gone separate ways from the Hoshinden Jutaijutsu Australia Pacific group, and we started again with only water kata, which some of you will fondly remember. Months and months and months of just that, and interpretations of that, and a lot of ukemi and punching bags. That was all I had. And slowly, I knew the framework of what I wanted to do, but I had to flesh out the actual physicality of it. And it was really in that period of time, from 2014 to late 2016. September 2016 is when we started the research dojo, where I am right now. And it was December 2016 that we finally left the Hurstbridge dojo, when we moved out of that building for good. So 2014 to the end of 2016, we got almost 3 years. By the time we left and we moved full-time to the research dojo, I was pretty happy. We developed, and this wasn't just me, this was hours and hundreds, thousands of hours of work with the advanced students at the time, and those who are still here today, thank you. We just devoted weekends and nights and long conversations and back and forward and papers going back and forward and my work and throwing people around and then observing that didn't work, line that through the curriculum. It was this big melting pot of development, and the goal being to rewrite from scratch a curriculum for new students, for coloured belt students to come in at white belt and then work their way through the study and the progressive study of the physical movements towards their black belt grades. Now, the black belt grades in Hoshin were always esoteric, and they still are. So it was the coloured belt grades, the Q grades, that were really needing some solid base to stand upon, ready for their work later on, their personal development work. really couldn't tell you the moments where that all occurred. It's not like all of a sudden one whole curriculum was finished. It's still in pieces, but it was the framework was there, the skeleton was there, and hopefully those of you who were there at that time will agree and reflect. By the time we moved into this dojo and we got started, it was again a new era. The start of 2017, January 2017, was when we moved everything into this building, and we first sort of put up the kamidana, and we started to flesh out the place. And then all of a sudden there's a new wave of people. Think of some of them. And some of you are on, right now. A new wave of people who joined. And so it was really interesting watching these epochs play out. And at each wave, the dojo was at a different point, and I was at a different point. I've come a long way in my own journey, my own development as a martial artist, let alone the head of the school. I've come a long way in the last 11 years. I'm 33 this year, so the dojo is 11 years old. I was 22 when I started the Reigning Spirit Dojo, which is pretty tragic, I think. If I think now, I'm like, I don't even think I'm ready to start it now. So I'm sorry. I just apologise in advance to all of you who have been with me for that entire length of time. I've developed a lot as a martial artist, but ultimately I know that the transcendental goal that I've always been heading in with this hasn't changed. And it hasn't really changed since day one. I knew when I met my teachers in 2001, I knew what it felt like, and I knew what I wanted out of it, and I knew what my relationship was with it. I didn't know how it would develop, but it hasn't changed. The taste hasn't changed. The feeling hasn't changed. It's like if you went and visited an old family house, and there's a sensation that is so familiar to you that it kind of speaks. But it's not about any of the items. It's not that there's a certain picture on the wall in a certain place. There's a relationship that you've developed. And so the relationship that I've developed with Hoshin doesn't live in these walls, It doesn't live in the buildings, it doesn't live in the mats or in the shrine. Like, those things are abstractions. They're secondary. So my relationship just continued, and as that's continued, I found that I've fleshed out more and more and more detail and refined not the art, but how to present my thoughts and how to present the art to all of you. 10,000 dojo points for sticking around with it, amazing. All I take from that is a hope that Hoshin is doing for you what it does for me. And it's something where I really find myself quiet, under the moonlight, and that relationship is vivid and is palatable and is passionate and is powerful, and it informs me and it really assists me. And it's full of basic principles and concepts that are presented in the work. And my attempt, and the Black Belt crew will attest to this, my attempt with the physical curriculum is to present work that honours the principles and the qualities, the physical manifestation of those principles and qualities that I think really underlie what Hoshin is and what it does, and what it is as a method and a methodology. But ultimately, if you think that the students are all individuals, I'm an individual person, this is my, Hoshinden is my personal journey. And those of you who are along for the ride, in much the same way that it's probably true to say that no one else in the world has ever studied Bujinkan other than Hatsumi Sensei. He's the only one who's ever studied that. It's his path, and we come along and we glimpse it and we take pieces from it, and it assists us in immeasurable ways. But really, he's probably the only one who's ever deeply knows that, in much the same way that his teacher, Toshitsugu Takamatsu Sensei, was the only one who ever really knew his particular flavour, And so Hoshinden is just my particular flavour, and I never intended for it to rewrite Glenn's work. I never personally got to study with Glenn. That I was a student of Jeff, and Jeff got to study with Glenn, so I was always a second generation Hoshiner Hoshinka, I suppose. So Hoshinden is just my attempt. My long-term hope would be that for all of you, Hoshinden doesn't become a refined, a constrictive boundary. It just becomes a launching platform and something that even if you have no personal desire to launch off and start, Joshua Jitsu, that you will find your own personal relationship, and the relationship that you will develop day by day and year by year through the art is unique, and it's yours. I can't touch that in much the same way that your experience and my experience aren't intermeshed. They are on a interpersonal level, but the relationship that I have going on with the art is unique. And I would hope the same for all of you. I'd expect the same, just is. So, moving forward to where we're at right now, it's just another wave. That's what I'm viewing it as. It's much the same way as the last 11 years. Things have changed, things come and go, and we've seen all these epochs of change over the time. And like I said, many of you who I can see watching now in the feed, many of you have come in and out of the dojo at very specific points in those epochs. I could probably name I can go through lists in my head of some of the students who've arrived at really key times and other students who've left at very key times. And it's fascinating to me to just sit back. I feel like a farmer sometimes up farming potatoes on the hill, watching the empire rise and fall down in the valley. Like, it's fascinating observing from that kind of perspective as the head of the school, the changes in the student body, and in no way in a judgmental way, just observing, saying, interesting that person left then and that person joined then. And it's curious. It's like a long sociology study, something that I reap great benefit from. My expectation is that this is the same, and that the changes that are occurring now are just another tide. In effect, you could even think of it as like this is just Reigning Spirit Dojo's fourth epoch. Maybe it's a lot to have 4 epochs in 11 years. I don't know. Can I shorten what an epoch? Era. I'll call it an era. I suppose an epoch's generally longer, isn't it? Period of time. I have some people here I'm filming with, not just laughing to space. It's like people laughing alone with salad. So, if I think about it in that way, I'm really expecting that there will be people who drift away from Hoshinden at this time. It's just the way that it is. It's just the context for them. And there will be probably really key people who join at this time, who either have been around in the fringes, who suddenly just feel inspired out of nowhere to get more involved, or have a real interest in the material that I'll be presenting, or just they appear out of nowhere. They heard something on a rumor and found their way. It's fascinating, yeah. So I just watch, and I wouldn't be surprised if by the time that we're at a point where we're back in physical contact with each other, there might be some new people. There might be some new faces, on the block. And I encourage you to welcome them in the same way that you wave goodbye to those that flow out with the tide, with no ill feeling. It's all just part of it. It's just a fascinating process. So in this way, I thought this is just like 2013. For those of you who just joined, I was talking before about some of the history of Reigning Spirit Dojo, and when we had the massive change when the Hoshinden Australia Pacific school went in one direction and we went in another direction, and we just parted ways, and it was quite like napalming a bridge, palming ways with napalm. That it was a really tentative time, and we didn't have a curriculum even, I had to write that from scratch with the help of wonderful people. And we really had to it actually peeled back the layers and posed a question to me again to say, what are the actual values at the heart of what I'm doing? And what is it that I think, if we tear away the structure of Reigning Spirit Dojo, what is it that is actually there? That's what that question brought up then. sure, we could still be in a dojo rolling around and throw each other around into roles, but it was shaky ground in terms of having clear vision, and as the head of the school, it was shaky ground for me because I didn't have a clear direction as feeling like the captain of the ship. So I spent a lot of that time over those few months clarifying and really refining what my vision was. And I came up with my more transcendental ideology for what I was here, what I was doing this for, and what Hoshinden was about. And it didn't, even that name didn't come about until a few years ago, maybe, I don't know, 2017, or I can't even remember, maybe 2018. It was recent that I finally settled on the name 12 Phases Hoshinden Jutaijutsu. You know, I'd thrown around a lot of names, and a lot of people had said, I don't think you want to call it that. It's stuck, you know. So my intention with this time, seeing it as just another wave of change, is that I get to dialogue and I get to clarify straight into your living rooms. You can't even get rid of me now. I suppose you can turn it off, but you know, you can do that. I'll still be there on the Facebook page. I get to just dialogue directly to you from a philosophical and a theoretical perspective, the basis of Hoshin, the qualities of Hoshinden, and the ideology. My hope is that by the time that we're back in physical contact with each other, in all of the physical aspects of the art, some of the questions that some of you have asked me over the years will be answered, and some of your own questions that maybe you've had about the art from a theoretical perspective or from a historical perspective or even just a kind of etymological perspective will be answered. And maybe it will mean that we'll be standing on even more solid ground to move forward into the next. Who knows? All I can tell you is that my interest in Hoshin and Hoshinden as an expression of that lies far beyond the walls and the mats and the weapons. And it's way beyond the books and the structure and the desks and the computers. And I love you all, but I have to say it's beyond even each of you. That at the end of my relationships with each of you, at the end of the physical places existing, at the end of the routine classes, my relationship with Hoshin is just continuing. I assume until I die. It just seems that's the way it's been for 20 years. I can't see the momentum slowing down now. So my job as the head of the school, I feel, is just to continue that. I'm continuing my journey, and I will continue to present the work as I interpret it through the vehicle that I've produced, 12 Phases, Hoshinden Jutaijutsu, and the Reigning Spirit Dojo is just one place for that to occur. But remember that Reigning Spirit Dojo is just the literal name of a physical place. We might have moved the physical place a lot, but it's really just a group, you know. It in itself it only has meaning for all of that which we bring to it. So the memories and the wonderful heartening experiences that we have all had at the dojo, that's not because of Reigning Spirit Dojo, that's because of you guys turning up to classes and forming relationships, forming friendships with each other, delving into personal introspection in ways, either through the physical art or through the philosophy and through the meditation and the breath work and the energy work. But it's all of you guys turning up that does that. It's not the building. I love the building, but you know, if we could be in another building, it would still be the same. If we're at a scout hall, it would still be the same. And now it just so happens that we're online, and I expect it to still be the same. I still feel the same. I don't know about you guys, but here I am. It's Friday night. I'm having a 3-minute philosophy talk with you. It's only been 50 minutes so far. So, if any of you have any questions over the ensuing weeks, the Dojo Facebook group, the student chat group, is one that we've had that set up for years. I don't think many of you have ever seen it before or used it. I just acquiesced it and turned it into a platform for us to dialogue in this kind of way. And I really hope that it could be a very useful avenue for dialogue and for presenting work. I already put up all of the current written curriculum for you guys to see. These videos will be there. We're inviting in other friends and buyu, like martial friends and martial family. I have made incredible contacts and relationships all around the world with incredible people, and I'm inviting them in and involving them in. I've got some hopes to be able to do some interviews, like some online Zoom style interviews with some really key people. So those of you who are Hoshinka, I was talking about having Takaharu Nakadai Sensei fly over to Australia. We had planned for him to come over in August. Who knows? There's an extremely high likelihood that that's not going to happen this year. And if not this year, next year. But I thought, oh my God, I can just Skype him and just video the Skype, and we can just interview, and I can just get him to be involved in that way. We'll see who we can chat to, see who we can dialogue with, and hopefully just continue the same thing we've always done. It's just that instead of being able to turn up in a physical flesh in a building with physical walls for the next short time, we have to extend the dojo to be an online place. But I have been available every Friday night for about the last 20 years in a Hoshin class somewhere, and I don't intend for that to change. The Friday night sessions are here, they're available, I'm here to be dialogued with. Some of you might only suddenly be now thinking like, oh my God, I should have asked him questions. I'm still here, ask me questions. I haven't gone anywhere, don't plan on going anywhere. And I can see in some of your awesome discussion, thanks Stephen, I look forward to you being 85. Hannah and I were saying today that looking at photos of you, you haven't really aged that much in the last 10 years. I haven't aged that much in the last 10 years. It's like, oh yeah, Hannah said that, Stephen, you look identical.
Not to you.
Yeah, to how you did in photos from 10 years ago. Here's hoping. Yeah, I think that might be enough to wrap up tonight. I just wanted to give a kind of an overview of the quality. I didn't want to just dot list. You know me, it's not my style to just go through and dot point qualities and principles. I was hoping to present what I think are the qualities and principles in my expression of this little introduction video, and hope that in my enthusiasm and in my passion and in my hope and in my virtue for what we're doing and what we've always done, that it was obvious, it was very obvious that there isn't really anything changing. Now, for those of you, I'm looking over at the corner of the dojo, it looks like some of you have come and already taken home your little dojo pack. So, awesome. I made 9 square meter of mats with weapons and a toilet roll. It's effectively like Super Dojo, my first Super Dojo take-home pack, trademark TM, but you can use it under license. And my hope is that during this time you guys can be training. There's no need for you. It's not like you've lost all your arms and legs. You might not be able to come to the dojo, to a physical place made of bricks and mortar, and actually do the training, but there's a curriculum online, hint, hint, and I'm going to be uploading videos of me moving through and processing through all of the techniques that are in the curriculum. We already have some videos, but nowadays they're out of date. I've got to remake them. There's a video on the dojo YouTube channel, which I think if you just Raining Spirit Dojo in YouTube, there's a video already of the 4 primary kata, which I put up years ago. And you'll find in there some funny videos. There's some crappy videos of us just mecking around in the dojo, the old scout, or in the old factory. What I'm going to be doing is using that as a resource, the Raining Spirit Dojo YouTube page, to upload more videos at this time, more work. I'm kind of thinking that the Facebook Live thing might work at least for the Friday night chats, and I have to have an idea. I have to have a think about what I want to do with the Wednesday night, because that's going to be less dialoguing and more just like a lecture. It's just guided meditation and qigong as a presentation. It's not about really chit-chatting back and forward or having dialogue. It's about me presenting something for you guys to just do in your living room. You can watch it later, and you can just take some time out. Because, in these times, which are stressful, I hope that you will remember what are the key principles that we've actually been studying for the last decade. Because I can guarantee you, the principles that we've been studying aren't how to roll over correctly or how to not break your arm under these conditions. That's not what we've been studying. Those have been vehicles of study. The key qualities are thrivability. Yeah? You should be able to thrive and survive under all circumstances. And that's really the purpose of martial arts. It doesn't have another value to people unless it can teach you how to problem solve and how to observe situations, situation and awareness and analysis, decision making through situation observation, and then action that's required, right action at right time. Yeah? So it's about learning, and it's about timing, and it's about distancing, it's about correct timing for correct application. Yeah, all of these things are what we learn in the physical form, and the purpose, the hope, of all martial arts for the last 1,000 years has been that they will mean that the individuals, the disciples, the students who continue on those studies, they have access to all of those qualities in times of need. So when a war runs through town and suddenly you can't go and study at the dojo anymore, those things didn't just vaporize, and it's not that long ago. You go back the turn of 1890 to the start of the 20th century, you've got laws in Japan where you can't be seen to be studying certain arts, and you can't be soliciting for students under pain of death. It's that's not a long time ago. So the exact same thing, it's just like now. It's just that it was a different context and a different situation, but those people didn't suddenly just be like, no, and went on with, pottery, and just decided that was it. They had to give up. It's all over. I'll never lift a sword again. I'm sure that a lot of them realize, and you can read this and you read through memoirs and notes from some of those teachers. But I'm thinking especially Moroharu Ueshiba, the Aikido founder, and Toshitsugu Takamatsu sensei, Hatsumi sensei's teacher. They have notes in their writings, and Hatsumi sensei writing about his teacher, where it's very clear that they were able to make decisions and to kind of live out their lives in ways where their martial arts wasn't something that really happened in a building. Sure, they taught in a building, but they were out, they were out farming and wandering the streets, working in different fields, finding their expressions in different ways. A lot of the teachers, Hatsumi Sensei is a great one, he was a famous actor. There's a television series from the 80s, a Japanese television series. He's the actor. That was one of his careers. He's a bone doctor as well. It's don't think that these things are isolated forms. When you're faced in a circumstance that demands that you demonstrate your values and your morals, how is that any different from suddenly being shocked because someone's grabbed you, or someone's pushed you up against the wall, or someone's pulled out a sword, in modern day, pulled out a sword right at your face, and the techniques that you pull out to deal with those physical techniques, just think of these as mental and emotional techniques. They're just standard ways of surviving and thriving. And I put pressure on all of you. I was saying to some of the friends I was talking to today, I don't expect you guys to survive. I expect you to extremely thrive in these times. Yeah? You should be able to take everything that you've studied in a physical format, and you should be able to apply it to yourself and your mental prowess. You should be able to look at your lives strategically